Welcome to the Grow As We Go podcast. I'm Sam, breathwork and embodiment coach, muse, and self-growth junkie. Here we create space for natural, vulnerable, and deeply connecting conversations on life as it happens, wisdom that I've picked up along the way, and tools to truly enjoy this beautiful life you've been given. I want to appreciate you for being here, whether this is your first time or you've been here since the beginning. We love feedback here, so leave your thoughts and takeaways from this episode in the review section of this podcast. This also helps the podcast become a bit more relevant in search reviews. Another way you can support this podcast is by following me on Instagram at Samantha__Charles and take a screenshot of this episode to share it on your social media and share your takeaways so that your junkie friends can come and get their fix too. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Grow As We Go. I'm Sam, and today I am joined with my friend Stacey Nelson. And we're going to talk about retreats, like in general. And we're actually planning a reclamation retreat together. And so we'll discuss that a little bit more as well, and like the intention behind that. And yeah, so I think that we'll just start off with who we are, how we met. You can go ahead and go first, and then that way, like who you are, what you bring into this world, and like things you're passionate about, just to get a vibe.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited. It's been great to co-create this incredible retreat together and dive into here so many passionate topics that we have as overlaps with our work and what we are inspired by in this life. And yeah, a little bit about me. I've been, on this journey of life where, growing up, I had a lot of health challenges, and by my teens had this massive moment in time where I was just faced with, okay, I don't feel like this is the path I'm meant to be going forward. I'm just getting sicker and I'm developing side effects, and it's affecting my emotional, my mental well-being. I just felt really, really stuck and really in a dark place. And so I feel like, so incredibly supported by the divine, where I had this beautiful woman come into my life via a friend of my mom who opened me up to holistic healing, ancient healing modalities. In parallel with that, was introduced to yoga and Eastern philosophy, and diving deeper into spirituality. And my whole world just had opened up from that point. And I really started not only to heal and start to come back into my wholeness and come back to who I really was, and feel my vibrancy, feel my vitality, but also starting to really feel this sense of passion towards these different topics and areas of study and work, that as I had evolved into, the threshold between high school and college, just noticing where that my passions were and what I wanted to do, and feeling such deep conviction that I wanted to offer this work and share this work with others, and in some way hope and aspire to have their life impacted in some way, the way that my life has been. So as I continued to study and devote, and of course move through many different certifications and lots of different lots of different rabbit holes and paths along the way, I really started to deepen a huge love for embodiment, and specifically working with women and allowing women to feel a safe space to get in touch with who they are beyond the distractions, the illusions, the identities, and create freedom from the inside out, where they can come back into wholeness, come back into a feeling of excitement for life, a sense of empowerment. And so that has just really taken um, a lot of space in my life the last now 11 years of sharing this work.
Wow.
So I offer many different trainings and retreats, and I work one-on-one and have in-person online clients, and also offer different immersions working with cacao and movement, sound, mantra, a whole array and variety of things that have really just impacted and created a lot of love within my own life and journey, and has brought a lot of joy with sharing with others. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, kind of like a dip into my world and journey. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing all that. That's one of the things that like I really admire and love about you is the like sisterhood. Like I can just feel it on you, you know? And I know that we've not had the opportunity to meet actually live and in person, IRL, or like internet friends right now, which is, I think really also a testament probably to both of us of like the level of connection that we have and trust that we feel within each other, to be able to like, hey, let's do a retreat. And we've never met in real life, like who does that? I don't know. Us. um, but yeah, just like feeling that authenticity and the connection and like love for sisterhood and in helping support and heal that wound. I definitely feel that. And I see that in your work too.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so me, I mean, my listeners, I guess, know who I am, unless this is the first one you're listening to. Hello, I'm Sam. I am a feminine expression and women's empowerment coach. I am like figuring out what I'm doing in this world. I have been very interested in the body and the way that it works from a very young age. I grew up in the country, and like if country folk are kind of different, so just bear with me with this story. My dad, like sometimes there were like pests, like a snake or like at one time there was like a bird that was eating a bunch, and I'm sad about that. He ended up killing it because it was like eating all the fish from the pond, a cormorant. Um, but I would like dissect these animals and look inside the body and just like from a very young, I think I was like 11 or 12, and just like, whoa, the body is so cool. And like the heart and just the skin and like the way that I just was really fascinated with it. And went to school to be, I was going to go into nursing, but chose to go to the animal route with veterinary medicine and did that for some years and just really, again, just like in awe of the body. And I was introduced to like meditation and through Joe Dispenza, and I really appreciated the way that he teaches. He bridges the gap between like science and spirituality that like I really needed because I grew up um, kind of, I guess, agnostic, and my grandpa was like borderline an atheist. And so it was just like, we don't know. I'm not going to spend time trying to figure it out either. And so that was really beautiful too, because it like learning from Joe Dispenza and then soon after that, learning about Wim Hof and breath work and diving really deeply into that work. And again, just the fascination with the body and its ability to heal. I've had a really incredible experience with healing like chronic back pain in my own self and just like witnessing other people heal and just for the power of the mind. Um, and yeah, so the power of the body. And then I've learned about somatics and started, in this last year, integrating more of like the feminine and bringing in sensuality and the body. I really see the feminine and masculine energies correlating to the body and the mind, where the body is more feminine and the mind is more masculine. And a lot of the time, people are very separated, and we've got this severing, the separation of mind and body.
Mhm.
And so my work has been with myself and with the people that I get to work with is about rewiring and reconnecting so that we can live a more healthy and aligned and passionate and vibrant life. And then so with the feminine too, it's like that sacral energy and the sensuality and the flowy movement. Um, Living in this like patriarchy is very detrimental to the feminine, you know, and I've seen a rise in that. And I'm really, really grateful to be a part of this work and to be joining with lovely women like yourself to continue to spread that knowledge. And yeah, I just really believe that when women can come into their feminine and come into their power through their feminine, then men will fall into compassion and like the world will heal. That's just my thing.
Absolutely. I so feel that. And it's so interesting if we look at society, it's like, you mentioned the patriarchy and how it is this paradigm we're living in where we are suppressing the feminine, we're suppressing our ability to feel, to express, to tune into our senses, to feel
Mm.
more awake and in that way more embodied in who we are, where, we're less about the mind and what we're doing and planning and go, go, go. And it's more about feeling and actually tuning into our intuition, and our body's wisdom begins to get cultivated, where we then as humans, right, whether male or female, tapping into our feminine energy, and especially women, where there's been so much suppression over history and
Mm.
time through different cultures. It's like, let's rise, let's tune into those parts of ourselves where we can develop a greater sense of being heart-led or heart anchored and centered as well, and just more fully expressed, being able to share our voices, show up in the way that we really desire to. I know we've spoken about this, one-on-one, and I love that listeners and I'm curious, listeners here listening, how often do we go through life going through moments of self-doubt or shame, or just feeling like the stories that are coming up in our mind are limiting us or blocking or preventing us from living how we really desire to. And there's all these boxes of how we should be living, or how we should show up, or how we should be in relationship, whether that's marriage, friendship, family dynamics. And it's like, to break down those layers through exploration and curiosity by diving into the work of somatics, embodiment, tantra, and masculine and feminine polarity. It's like we can really come into a greater sense of empowerment because of that embodiment that's coming into fruition, that's being cultivated, that is ultimately here for us to access. For those
Mhm.
of you who are listening and are like, that sounds foreign, what does that actually mean? It's like, this is where we're invited to get curious, to feel, to slow down, to take that time to really get to know ourselves, because we start to show up in the world in the way that others perceive us, or that we
Mm.
perceive ourselves in our mind. And then it's like, wait a minute, when we're actually asked who we are, that's right, I'm not my job. That's right, I'm not, this identity or this label or this box. I'm something so much more beautiful, so much more sacred, so much more precious, that deserves to feel full permission to show up, and full um, activation in liberation and embodiment. And so, yeah, just really wanting to give a moment to share that this is available for you. This reclaiming who you are, whether you've feel like you've lost yourself along the way, or you're in this moment like, oh, I haven't even considered this. Like, through this work, this is what's happening, is this reclamation and this reconnection that is beyond fear and shame and insecurities, even in life as the ebbs and flow, right? We're in this human experience. It's not like
Mm.
there's a moment where it's just like, aha, I'm
I've
there.
arrived.
I've arrived, right? We're going to go through these ebbs and flows, but we feel more equipped. We feel like there's a familiarity that starts to build, where the way in which we re-arrive time and time again can perhaps feel more efficient, or refamiliarize ourselves a little bit more, where we don't get lost or stuck for maybe quite as long as we once were, or
Mm.
we start to rebuild that reconnection within, that becomes an inner knowing that we can come back to and come back to and come back to.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting too. You're talking about the boxes that we put ourselves in, and the roles that we find ourselves in as well, and like the connection to that. I was talking with somebody else about this recently, where it's like there's almost this primal, this primal need that we have as humans to like be accepted by our community and to not be cast out. And that was very much based in survival a long time ago. And today things are different, but like that is very much still alive. And so when we think about doing things that are reclaiming of who we are, there are parts of us that we have shut down in order to fit in or to fit the mold or to be, still a part of the family. Like depending on your dynamic that you grew up in, like some families are very like, I mean, I think I just go to organized religion in a way where it's like very much about you do these things or you don't do these things. And a lot of what is suppressed in our culture is sexuality and sensuality and like full expression of the body and our
Mhm.
movement and our sounds and like all the different capabilities that it has that we've suppressed a lot of. And I think it like honestly is contributing to a lot of the disease, like we're no longer sit around a fire and get be in community. We no longer chant around the fire using our voices. We no longer dance around the fire using our bodies. And so we've like shut down all of our body.
Mhm.
And so being able to reclaim those things through a lot of the pressures or, it's taboo and these different things we don't even talk about.
Mhm.
And being able to reclaim those pieces of us that are very um, just integral to who you are as a whole person sometimes can feel really scary. And, you were saying too about like having that, I guess, emotional intelligence or flexibility, whatever you want to call it, to be able to have an interaction that's like triggering or stressful or whatever, and then you don't like stay in that loop of it. You like can come back to yourself and who you are. A piece of that for me too has been like shifting who I'm around and who my community is and my environment. So it's not only my internal environment, it's like the external environment shifts too. And that level of I guess growth or that shedding of people, if that ends up or repositioning or just life is ever changing, right? Can be really, really scary and really hard and painful. And I think, it takes a special kind of person to be willing to go through that sort of fire, if you will.
Absolutely. And I love to your point, it's not an easy path to take, but ultimately it leads us to greater connection and liberation and to our people. And speaking to the point which you mentioned about like the primalness of that's been shut down in our society in our world, it's like that is where when we come back into our rewilding is, when we come back into
Mm.
the way in which we can look at ourselves and see our voice as a healer, we can see our body as a healer, we can see ourselves as these powerful beings who have capacity to create alchemy, to move through the emotions and the mental chatter that comes up that keeps us in these places that are being stuck, to free ourselves through liberating our voice, through activating our body, moving our body, expressing our body, working with sound. These are all ways that we are creating shifts, that we are allowing transformation to take place. And, to in so much of our world, it's like sit down and shut up, and just like listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for those listening, that can feel a little confronting perhaps to be like, oh wow, you're right. Where have I been told to just sit down or shut up or just follow suit or your
Hmm.
voice? Nope, sorry, we're not going to listen to that right now. And this is a beautiful invitation to see, create a safe space for yourself in your own environment to work with your sound. Pick up an instrument, pick up a little shaker, pick up a pot and a stick if you need to. And put on some music where you can really just drop into a sense of feeling and allowing and see just even in that way what creates change within your inner body. And then from that point, seeing, okay, wow, my inner landscape is shifting. Now my outer landscape is shifting, and kind of looping back to what you were speaking about, Sam, with like things will shift. And that's a beautiful thing. You'll start to connect more with your people.
Mm,
I think we fear that. We hold on, we grip, we attach to what's familiar or what's comfortable or
mm,
what feels quote unquote safe, even if there's unhealthy dynamics happening. We just get into these habits and tendencies and patterns. Um, so lovingly looking at these aspects of your life and relations, of course, and I want to emphasize lovingly, right? This isn't to like bring judgment to ourselves or to our life. This is just about like being really vulnerably honest with ourselves, right? And being open to see what, is this really in alignment with me? Is this really something that's serving me? And being willing to see, and especially if you're feeling alone, maybe these are some things that you've already explored a little bit or have gotten curious about, but you're feeling alone in it, right? That's where leaning on community and or sisterhood in some form or way. And in today's world, we have so much more access to that, right? We can,
mhm.
you know, search in Facebook groups and, things that are going on. Maybe there's a women's circle nearby. We can go on Instagram and meet internet friends like you and I have met. There, get creative with ways to meet different community. And through connecting with community, especially women to women and sister to sister, I really want to speak to right now, is because we do carry so many sister wounds, whether you are a woman who has blood sisters and or just ancestrally passed down. I know for me, and even hearing your reflection, Sam, of like, I just knew like sisterhood, felt that authenticity. That brings so much warmth to my heart because I grew up in a family dynamic with a sister who shut me out and had no relationship with me and did not want any relationship with me. And so I felt really isolated, and I had this desire, she's 9 years older,
Mm,
beautiful, brilliant, and just this like little girl inside of me that was just like, love me, see me. I want to be friends with you. I want to
yeah.
hold hands with you, and just feeling completely shut out. And so I've had to do a lot of work around healing the sister wound and not fearing being shut down or not feeling rejected by other sisters, and how I can show up in who I am without molding, without changing who
Mm,
I am to fit that you know, who I think I need to be to fit in
yeah, for sure.
time. And that was hard. That was like, okay, I'm figuring myself out. I want to be able to hold this space within. And also ultimately what has really helped me, and would love to share this with those who are feeling like, oh, where do I begin? Befriend yourself.
Mm,
Love yourself, become your own best friend, and become your sister to yourself. And naturally, through embodying that and creating that authentic love with yourself, it'll naturally just start to, right? It's like an energetic match. You'll naturally start to magnetize and connect with the women around you who are also seeking that same relationship and dynamic and sisterhood. And yeah, there's so many layers to sister wounds. We could just dive into all of them.
right. Have a conversation just on that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, I think I have a either unique or like totally repressed that I don't know. That totally could be a possibility right now. We don't know what we don't know, but it's like I don't I've not quite experienced that like sister wound to the same degree that I hear you speaking about, and I've heard many, many other women speaking about. Um, but I hear about it. And so it's interesting because a lot of my experiences, like I have my own set of wounds, but a lot of them it feels like I picked up through like osmosis or something of my environment. Um, I had a little brother and it was just the two of us. So I didn't have like an actual sister. I have cousins that are like sisters. And we're just, I guess, really close and it felt healthy. I did have friends where there was like competition sort of things, and so I suppose that's like a piece of it. Um, but yeah, it's really, I think, and what I hear is that it is a really big wound, and it's a way that like there's cattiness and competition, and the way that we relate is through competition sometimes and through comparison and judgment instead of through like collaboration and cooperation and like the less wounded side of things. And I think that that this is a perfect segue into like why retreats in general can be so impactful. There's like that group dynamic if you're at a co-ed retreat. um I've been doing, I'll do breath work like at home, and then sometimes I'll do breath work like with a class, and like just the energy and the like intensity of the experience is so much more heightened when there's other people around. um and I think that that really speaks to like group energy, and then whenever we get women together, if we can be in a space and in a place that feels safe, and that's what, retreat containers hopefully are, meant to be safe, right? And like a space for women to come together and be in sisterhood and in communion with each other and in sharing and open and vulnerability and all these things. And I mean, we women are the healers. The feminine is the healing energy and the nurturer and the mother and like all these great things. And so there's so much energy available on the healing side of things. And so getting a group of women together is, I mean, just really, really healing on a lot of different levels.
Absolutely. And what I've noticed in retreat spaces, specifically in those with women and the healing that occurs within those spaces, is you know, it's something that not only happens within that time, but it's something that they leave with and then can go back into life and feel like these wounds, they're not carrying them as presently with them, right? They've
Mm.
started to heal those wounds. They've started to come into this feeling of, "Oh, okay, I can, this wall that I've built is now de-armored, or this insecurity that I have, I feel so much more open." And the intimacy that's created within women, and and I've seen so many different dynamics in these spaces where some women are a bit more open, some maybe a little bit more shy or closed off in some way. But it's so beautiful to see as time evolves in the space that we're holding and the journey that we're going on together in this in these containers, is it's like everyone just like takes off these layers. It's like the exhale where it's like all of a
Mhm.
sudden everyone just drops into this openness and this vulnerability. And even in, it's one thing to be doing this work on your own, but I feel like when we can bring each other in it, and okay, wow, this sister is moving through something that I can relate to, but in a much different way. Or, wow, I haven't experienced this, but now that it's in my field of awareness, it's making me, and like that osmosis, like it's healing something deeper within me that may have even been unconscious, right?
Mhm.
That's now at the forefront of my mind and my heart that I can now look at and pay attention to and move through and process in this safe and beautiful environment. Um, yeah, it really is the catalyst to changing the world. I really do believe, I really do believe that if we can, to heal others, we need to heal ourselves. And when we can show up in groups and spaces with in intimate containers like so, that's like creating this ripple effect that moves into our relations, into our communities, and the world at large. And it really is this ripple effect that um, creates such positive impact and change.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you're speaking about too is really interesting, that just that the dynamic as well as the like osmosis sort of thing that we're talking about. We're just using that word now. I know it's totally not correct as a science person, but whatever. It's it it opens up your awareness, like you were saying, like we don't know what we don't know. And there's things that are unconscious. And like that picture of the iceberg, it's like you're conscious of these things. There's all these other things underneath that are subconscious. And the only way to bring these subconscious patternings to light is to bring awareness to them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was sharing earlier too, like we don't know what we don't know. And when you hear somebody else talk about something or speak about something, you're like, oh, okay, and I can see that being true, or oh, that actually did happen to me. Like whenever people are sharing things, it anytime I'm in a group setting and like people are sharing, and then I'm like, I don't really have anything to share, and then people will start sharing, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's triggering some memories in my mind and some realizations that I'm having. I want to share now, and I think that that's what's really cool too about the dynamic and the different personality types, I suppose, of different women whenever you gather. And just the dynamics are so fascinating to me. Um, and and that way you can like pick up different information from like, the facilitators that are like there to share certain levels of information, certain codes for you to pick up and learn on whatever the retreat is about. But then there's also the women in attendance to the retreat that like are your sisters and that you spend time with, and you hear what they're sharing, and you pick up things from them as well. And so this is really like beautiful ecosystem of healing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think seeing women share, especially for those who maybe are a bit more shy or timid or whatever. I don't like using the word shy. I got labeled as shy when I was a kid, I really like stuck with that for a while, but it it's it gives permission, and there's different levels. And I know that I've gotten feedback from different people on Instagram and people that I've like had the pleasure of working with too, of just like being that permission for people to be in your body and to speak your truth and to just show up authentically, and I think a lot of people, like we were talking about in the beginning, shut that down. And there's ways that oftentimes that will show up as judgment towards people who are expressing what you've shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, instead of curiosity about like, okay, why is that bothering me? Like they're not directly punching me, or whatever. It's just like they're doing their own thing. Like, why am I on a busy about it? It's like, oh, I've shut that part of me down. Or like, I wish I could express myself. I felt safe to do that or whatever it is.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because when we give ourselves permission and we give permission, and that naturally gives permission for others. And,
Mhm.
I think we can feel less alone in that. And when we come together as sisters, it's like, oh, wow, this support, I feel the space that's held, it's it can feel in a lot of ways um like the walls that are maybe built up around us can come down a little bit more easily or even more gracefully because it's like I'm not
Mhm.
alone in this journey. And I think we forget that as women, right? We carry all these roles and responsibilities, and with the paradigm of life that we're living in with, such masculine driven energy, we forget that we can relax into this knowing that wait, there's a web of women around the world who can relate, who can see me, who can hear me and listen to one another and learn from one another and feel in a lot of ways more nourished by one another. And that the way in which we can move through these layers of the self with one another and see each other and witness that with each other in the process develop so much more compassion for women where there's
Mm.
less judgment, there's less criticizing because it's like, oh, now I see you as myself. I see that we're all healing parts of ourselves, we're all carrying wounds within ourselves. And if I'm judging you, I'm judging myself, right? And so I think that when we're in the space and container of women's retreats or gatherings, you come back to that remembrance. You come back to that, wait a minute, I'm not alone, and there's nothing I actually need to be judging, right? We can have our preferences and opinions, but when we show up in the world and in life with these judgments and perceptions and critiques of other women, it really is just creating more separation. And coming together in these circles, it reunifies. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
let's mold back together. Let's eliminate some of that separation and let's come back into harmony. Let's come back into union. Doesn't mean we have to be best friends, but we can develop compassion and respect and love for one another. And that is so healing and so beautiful and so needed in this world.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about too is a great example for how, again, how impactful retreats can be in general, for creating that like safe container for you to go into and like allow the armor to fall off. And it's interesting too to notice and think about like, some of the retreats that I've gone to and then come back home. And then there's like that integration piece where it's like, oh shit, like this isn't that container, and now there's like all this shit that I get to deal with, and so is being mean to me, and so is judging me, and I'm feeling all like ah. But I think that even though there is like that incongruence with like your new knowing or your remembering and your environment. That's kind of what I was speaking to in the beginning, where it's like sometimes that stuff needs a shift,
Mm.
and that's really painful, or it can be really scary. Um, and I'm not saying that like you need to, you go to a retreat and you come home and you ditch everybody, you're like cut all ties, but maybe that means like having a difficult conversation about like, hey, I don't, learning new levels of communication too, right? Like whenever you treat me this way, I feel this and I know I'm responsible for my own feelings. However, in order for me to like, how can we relate in a more constructive way instead of this like no, no, no. And that's a really vulnerable conversation to have, and maybe it's not safe to have conversations like that with everybody in your life, but you know, I just really choose to surround myself with people that is this, those are normal conversations.
Mhm.
Um, but I think too, if you want to speak about how maybe a bit about integration.
Yeah.
That
Well,
word is so funny to me because I'm like, what the fuck is integration? It took me a really long time to like grasp that concept.
just as important as doing the work. And I think so many
Mm,
spaces and people and even facilitators forget that piece. And it's become something that's been so important and valuable for me, not only as someone who is also, of course, a lifelong student and doing the work, but also as a space holder and facilitator. Is like that is just as necessary. And something that came up for me as you were sharing is like
mm,
permission to reevaluate needs and boundaries and what's really serving you, what's actually creating this perhaps even more like depletion or suppression or disconnect in some form or way. And that can feel scary and confronting. And I like to say that the integration part, give yourself as much space as you can. And now I know that that's not accessible for everyone. Actually, I was on a call with a group of my yoga teacher training students last night, a group of a 30-day check-in, and one of the students shared, integration was rough. I unfortunately just like got right out of this 22-day container with everyone and went right into work, and that was needed for him in that moment. Like he didn't have the option or the availability to take more time off work, for example. So I want
yeah.
to just name that, accessibility is definitely a consideration as to like what your capacity is, and or if you're a mother and have kids, different one or two jobs. So consider where you can take the little moments to drop in. And, journaling can be really helpful, leaning on the community that you have. For example, if you did, going on retreat, I like to always have a WhatsApp group where we're
Hmm.
in contact, checking in on one another, having these check-in calls, like I said, that we had, which can re-remind ourselves and refamiliarize ourselves as well. And just being really patient, not making quick decisions, in spaces where you go into an immersive experience or retreat setting, it could be really easy to want to get out and just like cut all these cords and make all these new decisions. And it's like, I like to say, pause, take a moment to pause, give some spaciousness. Consider how other people may have grown in the time that you've also been in retreat, or just like shifted and navigated in different ways as well. And I really do believe that, the conversations, the communication can really be helpful. And again, evaluate and discern for yourself if that's healthy and or what approach you want to take. Sometimes that's writing a letter, and that can feel safer, versus like that perhaps meeting, person to person where you may not feel as safe in a conversation together. And continuing with your practices, and this is different for everyone. So I don't like to say that there's like a specific way or practices or things to do, because integration will look different for everyone. Because, for some, you might have some specific practices that might work for you really well right now. And then you might be along your journey and you're like, wait a minute, I'm actually feeling disconnected from that. Ooh, this new practice has come into my field and awareness. And this is something that I'm actually feeling even more connected to. So lean on the tools that you have, lean on lean on working with your environment so that it can support the process that you're in. Even just like lighting a candle, working with, different smudging or incense or sage or essential oils, things that can help to bring you back into your senses, into your feeling body, so that the mind doesn't start just running and running and running again, and you can still slow it down and be present with yourself and pace yourself like that as well. I like to say and remind people, like, we can live life like a honey drop. Like we can just like savor in the sweetness, even though it's not always sweet and it's not always pleasurable and enjoyable, but we can be in that, knowing that in the moments that we're slowing down and tuning in and present and aware with ourselves and paying attention to what our needs are and what boundaries are in place and what we need to do for ourselves to support our different processes, there will be this eventual drop of the honey that it's like, oh, okay, like move through that. Great. All right. Now I'm feeling good. All right. When's the next honey drop?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are just like a few things that come up for me in this moment.
Yeah, when you were speaking about like the word integration too, some of what was like coming through to me was like, oh, okay, integration. It's like reconnecting, rewiring, right? It's like you have this knowledge in your brain now, so let's integrate it into the body. And like what practices can you do? And that's where like embodiment and journaling, I think, is a form of embodiment because you're using your body to get out of your like get the knowledge from your mind onto paper, and movement and breath work and different things that can bring you back. And like you were speaking too of like slowing down and using essential oils or different smudging or stuff like that, because that brings you in, you're using the sense of smell and like slowing down and probably doing some form of breath work or awareness of that. And then yeah, the honey drop, that's like a cute little way to like think about like finding the miracles and the miraculous and the mundane, and just like really appreciating like having gratitude,
Mm.
just like a total shift of mindset into gratitude for everything and even the things that are challenging. And I'm sure, you've had experiences where you're like, I'm not grateful for any of this shit, like this is awful.
Oh yeah.
But it's and not through the lens of like bypassing any sort of feelings. Like you need to feel your feelings, but there is always a silver lining
Mhm.
and you can find it, and maybe it takes time for it to actually show up. But yeah, just I definitely believe in the everything for a reason.
Absolutely. And that comes back to being in this human experience with the knowing that there is the full spectrum, right? And when we're in the shadow self and when that's present for us and when, we're feeling in the depths of whatever process or healing we're moving through, it's like even just that moment of gratitude to know that there is grace, to know that there is light where we coexist with the light and the dark. And that in itself can shift something psychologically, physiologically, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, wow, I'm not going to be here forever, right? We know
Mm,
one thing exists as a constant, and that is that everything is ever changing, right? And so
yeah.
let that be your thread of hope. If you're listening to this and you're feeling like you're in a stuck place, or you're feeling where you're like, will I ever get out of this moment? Will I ever break free of this current reality? Come back as much as you can. Let it be authentic, let it be true for you. Rage and be angry if you need to. And also, what re-inspires you? Maybe that's a walk in nature. Maybe that's a call with a friend. Maybe that's doing something with your hands or dancing. What re-inspires you to give you that glimmer of opening, of spaciousness, of light, where it can start to beam through. It can start to come right into the body and the mind and the heart, where okay, that the depths of that darkness or the density that's happening within the self doesn't feel as tangibly dense, um like, that it's creating this like huge incongruency, where it's like, okay, I'm starting to meet the light, I'm starting to break free, I'm starting to come up. And of course, we got to trust the process of one that might fluctuate again. And though it's like, when we can remind ourselves to like stay inspired by life, to notice when we can get turned on by life, to
Mm.
notice when we can get re-excited by life. And that I feel like, I and that's what I feel like this work does, like the work that we do with embodiment, with the feminine arts, with vocal, I do a lot of vocal empowerment work that helps us to feel reconnected and re-inspired by life, where we're like, okay, coming into a touch practice, coming into a self-intimacy practice, where we can feel beyond these I never want to label it as good or bad, or lighter, even lighter dark feels a little for me sometimes, but just like a little bit more denser or uncomfortable, right? We can start to feel more of the pleasure. We can start to feel more of the moments where we feel, yeah, yummy inside, good. And again, good, more so perhaps
Yeah.
language with that.
Yeah. And I think, that's an interesting, like language is so important. And when you're talking, I think a lot about Michael Singer's work and the surrender experiment and like living life untethered or untethered soul.
Mhm.
Ooh, and I just love his work. I like was very obsessed with him for like a solid year. Like I went to his Temple of the Universe in Florida and got to meet him in person, and like it just, uh, yeah. So speaking about like the way that he talks about the heart in one of the chapters was I just cry almost every time I think about it. Like we have this orchestra of the heart and it plays all these notes, and it's beautiful. And I think about a movie without the soundtrack, it's like it's dull, And so you think about your life without emotions, it would be very dull.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like that you can't have light without dark and like joy without sadness. And like there are these, on opposite ends of the pleasurable experience for most people. It still is like, how can we have gratitude for that? And I
Mhm.
think too, something that just came through too is about like pleasure and pain. Like they're on the same spectrum and they're opposites, but there's like, there's a lot of the like, gosh, excuse me, through a lot of the like self-pleasure work and different like we're gonna get into a different world here for a second, but like kink play and like all these different things, like exploring these like taboo topics. It's like their pleasure and pain is like a really fun dynamic, and like that you can find pain in pleasure and you can find pleasure in pain. Also, it's really, really fascinating that world. Um, but there, all that to say that you can find joy in sadness, and there can be sadness and joy as well.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a really, just really interesting way to go about life with that understanding and that like integrated into your body of these different spectrums of emotions and feelings, and like that they're all, I don't know, like it can be all of it can be a honey drop, you know?
Exactly. Absolutely. And one thing that has been really present for me is like the excitement and anxiety and like it's
Yeah.
overflow, and like they're coexisting at
Oh, for
times.
sure.
And I think, and that's what a lot of embodiment is based on, is how we can be with this and allow our capacity to hold these without feeling like we have, without being in a reactive state, or without being in an emotional state that leads us down actions or decisions that maybe we're out of an emotional reactive state, where we can hold it and be aware of it and feel it and allow it, but ultimately stay in this pace and rhythm of life, and be discerning and actually feel in a lot of ways more sovereign in that way, like more clear in that way, more um and yeah, more discerning in that way. And I love the dance between that. And I think, and there is like this fine line between it. And I think the more that we dive into this work, the more that we can see that we can really embrace this. I know so many different people who look to some of this work and or are come into, quote unquote, like, you know, like spiritual communities or conscious communities, and they get this idea of like, oh, we have to, move beyond the body, or we have to,
Hmm.
liberate ourselves beyond the mind. And it's like, no, again, how can we befriend the mind? How can we befriend the body? Like, this is our temple. This is like what we
Yeah.
are gifted and blessed with in this lifetime. So how can we work with that and begin to love it in the spectrum, and with the spectrum of life and the emotions that come with it as well? And that's one of the things that I think is going to be really beautiful for us in this retreat that we're holding in April together in Sedona, is a lot of like coming back home, a lot of coming back to that self-love and reconnection to self, where we can love and embrace our fullness, reclaim who we are, reclaim our self-expression, reclaim this version of who we are, and see that the versions of ourself that we are seeking or desiring are already right here waiting for us.
Hmm.
So it's going to be powerful, sister. I'm
Yeah. I'm
excited.
so excited. Um, I think that, yeah, I'm good to like shift into the retreat and what we're gonna be doing there. I'm really excited about it and excited to share it with the experience with you and with the women who show up and feel aligned to joining and like hear the call. Um, yeah, definitely about like it's a women's only retreat, and so we are like honing in on the like divine feminine and therefore the body. Because as we spoke before, it's very much we're in this society and the culture of very masculine energy. And so the feminine is quieted and shut down and shamed and, like fear. There's so much fear too that I've noticed in a lot of the like conditioning. It's all out of fear. And so we shame and we dismiss the body. And, even we were speaking about with the like in different spiritual communities and, the demonizing of the mind that I witnessed. And also the like transcendence and wanting to get beyond the body of things. And it's like, to me, I've spent a long time like searching outside of me for like the answer, of like, okay, how do I do that? Right? Like, how do I get beyond the mind, or how do I get beyond my body? And like coming back home and realizing that we yes, we are spiritual beings living in a body, but like we're living in a body. And like we experience the mind. And a lot of that's like Michael Singer's work too, where we are experiencing these different things and we have the capability to like reconnect with our energy in the energetic body, which has been, a continual journey for me. Like it's really easy to be in your physical body, your emotional body, and your mental. experience, but like the energetic body is really really subtle, and it's pretty quiet, and it lives in the body and can reverberate outwards. But I think tuning into the body is the key home, you know? Um, the body is where all of the like receptors and how we experience the world first come into the body, and then it informs the mind. And it happens so quick, we sometimes can't even tell the difference. But we've been trained and conditioned to live in our mind. And so we're coming back into the body and reclaiming that divine feminine essence and reconnecting to our body, and knowing that there is magic available in the body and in the feminine energy, like true magic. Gosh, I remember being, like my obsession with the body and like fascination with it while I'm friggin' dissecting animals. Um, and just like knowing like, God, there is something like magical at play here and mystical and like beyond the mind, beyond all our understanding. And like just it's not taught, and it's where we become so removed and so disconnected from that sort of teaching that I remember feeling like, gosh, there's got to be something. That's why I got so excited, like with Joe Dispenza's works. I was like, this is the magic, like I knew we were magic. I knew we were capable of all these amazing things. And like, here it is. But I think like even, some of his practices like meditation and like really intense meditation to me anyway, like hours, like sitting up straight. And like to me, even in retrospect, realizing like that's a really masculine way to go about like transcending, like sitting up straight back. And one of the first women's retreats or half day workshop that I went to, she was speaking about that. Like, as feminine bodied people, you get to listen to your body about what actually makes sense. Like maybe sitting up straight for hours doesn't make sense for you. Like maybe movement makes more sense, and I found a lot of like really deep connection and meditative states through my movement and listening to music and sensual and sounding and using my body more. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a reconnection to that. And there's like a lot of different things that we're going to be hosting. I'm super excited about like our lineup and like, our schedule. We've got this balance of masculine and feminine, which is really, really nice and been fun to flow and work with.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you want to speak a bit about like what we're going to be doing, if you want to get a little sneaky peeky.
Absolutely. Well, I love that you brought in, I just want to speak to what you brought
Yeah.
in meditation, because I mean, that rings so true for my own experience. I am someone who has spent months in silent meditation retreats.
Mm,
At least once a year, I'm taking 10 days of silence, and it is very masculine in the way that we have these super long sits. And there's so much value in it. I have such
sure.
deep appreciation for, meditation, the way that we can arrive in meditation through stillness and silence. And that's only one part of us that we're able to really tap into. And it's like the feminine energy, and I even notice it in my own body as I'm sitting on my breaks, I'm dancing on my breaks. I
Mhm.
am like shaking out. And of course, staying in silence and then like, okay, coming back to my seat. But it's just to name like how these dynamics are so present in our life and these energetics are so present in our life and how we need to meet those, right? And
Mhm.
to your point, if you're feeling like, wait a minute, sitting for hours on end isn't serving me in this moment, explore meditative states through dance, through feminine arts, through these different ways of expression and creativity. And I love that we'll be weaving that in our retreat is like the moments where we'll be in ceremony together and working with fire, cacao. We have the voice empowerment workshop that I'll be leading, which is going to really allow us to come into our full expression through our voice. This has been something that has been really healing for my own personal journey and has very organically become a aspect of the work that I do and I bring to different spaces and people. And, you know, for those of you who are listening who are like, oh, what might that entail? Well, I've had people express that their experiences in that have been parallel to plant medicine experiences because
Mm.
they're able to dive into such deep spaces within that allows us to, turn on these parts of ourselves that really just like opens things and, you know, and I don't want to set any expectations or anything, but it is
Right.
profound and it is really incredible when we can start to tap into where we can go through these different tools. And, I know you'll be leading the intuitive touch workshop, and we'll have ecstatic dance and opportunity to do yoni casting. And there's just so much beautiful work that we'll be weaving that is from, coming from different ancient wisdom, philosophy, perspectives, and practices, but also meeting our modern day woman, our modern day
Mm.
self, and how we can intersect the two and become more integrated, embodied in that, where, yeah, it feels more whole, it feels more true and alive for us versus like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we can speak to some of these things and they feel so abstract or so like, what? And the invitation here is just give it a try. Like, come and join us. Come and because it's really through like the lived experience that we can meet and touch these different parts of ourselves. And
For
that's where the
sure.
aha moments come in. That's where the transformation really takes place because it's not something we're not just like using our mind and reading about and studying. It's like, that's very masculine driven in itself. We are feeling, we're experiencing, and to be an immersive 5 day Sedona women's retreat. Heck yeah. Like so epic. You are like fully like, okay, I'm here to experience, I'm here to feel, I'm here to explore, I'm here to get curious and be lovingly and safely held in a group container that
Yeah.
is full of permission to show up as you are. There's nothing that we expect of you. There's nothing that we feel like, yeah, there's no certain like kind of yeah, like mold you have to fit. We're just here to welcome you in as you are and allow you to experience the ways in which you can feel more nourished from within, empowered from within, liberated from within, where reclamation can really feel present for you.
Yeah. And I think too what you were speaking about with just showing up and being authentic with who you are. Within that, it's like if there's any, well, there's a lot of things there actually I want to touch on. Oh my God. Um, it's so good, so good. Is there's a piece about like honoring yourself and checking in with yourself and having that self-trust and also the courage to speak up if you like feel uncomfortable with anything. Like you mentioned yoni casting casually and and
Casual.
casual. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do it. I can send you home with the stuff. You can do it at home if you would like, or you just don't need to do it at all. There's like various levels of participation. And again, like it's all up to you, and what feels authentic and aligned with where you are in your journey. And maybe you'll be ready for it another time, or maybe you'll be ready for it now. It's just like again with coming to spaces such as this where there is growth available, it's like there's also discomfort available, like there's these two different polarities and growth and discomfort. And somebody had shared, one of my teachers is like, you can't buy confidence. If you could buy confidence, people would like, that'd be a huge market, but like you can't buy it. You can only experience these different things that like essentially give you confidence, or you attain that feeling and that security within yourself through like different experiences in life, such as retreats or workshops or like honestly being in fucking relationships, like there's so much of life when we're doing our own thing within ourselves, like retreating and all that stuff is great. But like you were speaking about earlier in the podcast, like sharing it with the world and sharing it with others and bringing in the community, like that's another level of growth to me. Is like I have always viewed relationships and I joke that I'm like a self-growth junkie. Um, and I've been like, started going to therapy when I was like 15 and like have been in the space for a long time and like had a lot of knowledge around this stuff, but like really intensely in the last like maybe 3 or 4 years. And like really kind of having a different understanding about what I'm actually doing, right? Like it wasn't just by accident as a kid, but, and there being like, oh man, I lost my train of thought. Um, just there being growth available and it being discomfortable, LOL, uncomfortable, but it's like there's a lot of growth available there. And yeah, I essentially lost my train of thought there. So
No, I hear you though. It is true. It's like these spaces is where, especially if you're listening to this and you're like, I have been seeking growth. I have been desiring growth in some way. I mean, no matter what this experience, because ultimately everyone who comes on this retreat is going to have their own unique experience. And
for
again,
sure.
based on where you're at with comfortability, adapt, shift, lean into your yeses and nos as you feel authentic and true for you. But just even being in the energy of Sedona, this energetic vortex, we'll be going on
Yes.
a vortex hike. So we'll be feeling into this. So alchemy is bound to take place just simply by being in the
Just
space
simply
together.
showing up. You don't even have to do anything. You get it by
Exactly.
osmosis, okay?
Exactly. Alchemy is going to happen. And being in that space, and I've hosted a retreat in Sedona before, and it's true. It's like people get there and they're like, whoa, like this energy feels different. And as we're working in ceremony and workshops and different experiences together, it is just like this. It is like this tapestry that we're creating, and this space within this like portal that supports the alchemy, right? It's like we're bringing everything into this like location and this space and this time and this immersive 5-day experience for everything to just grow and transform from that place. So it's really special and really beautiful, and I'm so freaking excited and cannot wait to have those who are ready to join us.
Yeah, me too. Um, well, I think this is a good natural close here. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I feel complete. Just really wanting to encourage those who have been, whether you've been to different retreats before, whether you're brand new to retreats, to really, see what's available for you here and reach out if you have any questions. We'd be happy to book a call with you. For those
Mhm.
that are ready, we've got you ready to join us. And
Yeah, I'll put there's depending on when you listen to this, there will either be like an application form to like for the wait list or for the like let's fucking go, sign up and well, and that's the thing too, right? It's like it depends on where you are. Like if you are curious and not quite sure and like want to have further conversation, still like you can fill out that application form and we'll give you a call and just have like a chat to make sure that like it feels aligned for you and aligned for us as well and just like it being like a mutual like decision, and yeah, I'll put all the links, all the information, links to Stacey Nelson and her Instagram and how you can get to know more about her. And then for the Reclamation retreat. So yeah, we'll have all that in the show notes for you and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you all for listening. Sam, so great to have this conversation and flow with you. And we're so excited for, this retreat.
Yeah. If you found parts of this podcast interesting, useful, or at the very least entertaining, I hope that you'll share your takeaways and tag me on social media or leave a review. And we appreciate you and we'll see you next time.